Good evening, Sandites. Welcome to District Dialogue. It's Wednesday, April the 27th, and the topic this evening is about enrollment for the 22-23 school year. It's amazing that we're already talking about how to get your child registered for the upcoming year. So we're going to spend a lot of time with Kristen Arnold, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services and Human Resources, and Carrie Slagehuber, who is our District Director for Special Education, but also wears that Enrollment Center administration hat. So welcome to tonight's show. I want to preface by saying that the slideshow will be a link in tonight's session so that you can click on that and go to all the information that we're going to present tonight. So we're going to start off and talk about pre-enrollment or pre-registration for the next year, and we've termed that DIVE. Fun little acronym. That means
Data, Information, and Verification of Enrollment.
Fantastic. Now, you'll probably remember that typically DIVE, this process for current students, would be happening right now, actually. One thing that I think is important to know is that Sand Springs is going to a new student information system called Infinite Campus. It's going to be so much easier to access for not just teachers and staff, but also for parents. And we're in the middle of a technology conversion to that. So we've spent a lot of time thus far trying to get our records ready for that conversion. But I think now that we're kind of in this place where we're unfolding how that's going to look for pre-registration for next year, we have some great news. So, Ms. Slagehuber.
Yeah, absolutely. So the really great news for that is that it's going to become a one-stop shop for you. And so in years past, you'll remember you had to go into another program. You always had to remember some login information. You had to know your child's lunch ID number. There were things that you had to do to get logged in. And it was a little more complicated than we wanted it to be. And so with our new program on Infinite Campus, you're going to be able to go in and you're going to go into online registration and you're going to be able to update any information for your children. So this is for students that are currently Sand Springs students who will also attend Sand Springs schools next year. The paperwork that is required is going to look the same. We're going to ask to make sure that your address is the same, or if it's changed that you modify that. We're going to ask for updated contact information. We want to make sure we know who your emergency contacts are. All of those things are going to look the same. The portal is just going to be different, and it's going to be embedded in our student information system so that it's, like I said, a one-stop shop for you so that you're there for that. And then later in the year, when you're wanting to check your students' grades or you're wanting to contact a teacher, those things are all going to be in that same portal.
So just to clarify, we used to have, currently, until this year, we had two software pieces that had to talk to each other in order to make that data transfer from enrollment to the actual student information system. And so just that clarity is going to be fantastic. But the great news, typically people are doing it this time of year.
Yes.
So I know Ms. Arnold was a principal in the sites, and that was always
right. And what you're probably used to having called is pre-enrollment.
Right.
So I'm pre-enrolling my child. I'm getting my information updated. A few years ago, we did those packets that went home and we killed trees, and then we quit killing trees and everybody kind of got the new system. But this is even going to be more updated and everything's going to talk together. And that was just going to be a faster process, easier for parents and for future years moving forward. It's just we're working on getting that updated and we're excited about the system. So pre-enrollment will look different. And pre-enrollment does not mean that they're set for their courses. It's two different things.
Right. It's
Some
all
parents
about
get confused about
absolutely.
that.
It's all about data verification. So we want to make sure that your contact information is the same. All those demographics, we want to make sure we have correct. The good news is you're not doing it right now. And maybe that's better news for sites as we get to the end of the school year activities. It gets really hectic. So we're not doing that now because the new portal will open up
June 1st.
There you go.
June 1st. And we need a little drum roll there.
I know,
So
right?
June 1st is when that's going to become available. If you follow our social media, our Sand Springs Public Schools, you're going to see a real push for that. You're going to see it on your site. Facebook pages, so each elementary, the middle school, high school, they're going to push things out too. and you'll know that's the trigger for, okay, now it's time for me to start working on this for my student. And why that's really helpful for us is it gives us a really good gauge of what next year is going to look like. So, for example, if you know on the last day of school this year that you're moving out of Sand Springs, it would also be really important for you to let the sites know that, so we're not trying to track you down for all of that information all summer long. Go ahead.
I was just going to, some of the planning that happens prior to this summer, really, people are so funny. They say, what do you do in the summer? And that is really our time to plan for the next school year. And so one of the things that's critical for us is to know caseloads. And you could speak that a little bit, Ms. Arnold.
Caseloads really have to do with how many students are going to be in a class, and we want to be really clear about that because we want to keep our class sizes such that are, so all of our students can learn. They're not overloaded. We're meeting all of our students' needs. And with a little difference, which we'll talk about later, about transfers and how that looks different this year, it's just better to know those numbers up front and have that information. And even if something happens, you have to move away because of your job, your husband's job, whatever, if you're pre-enrolled or if you're doing this and you've done this, but that happens, call and let the district know so that we know to take that information out and we're not counting those slots. So we can get those students into their seats and know and make sure that we have decent class sizes.
So the other thing I would say is it's really important for you to hook into our Facebook page over the summer because since we're going to be out already, we're going to be trying to communicate that out using all of our communication tools. So on Facebook, we have a Twitter account, we have Instagram, but we also have a system, as you all are probably well aware, where we can push out text messages and phone calls to our people. So really important that your demographics are correct and that you sign up for those kinds of things. So we also have a Sand Springs app that is very helpful in regard to activities that are going on around campuses. But just be looking for that portal to open up June 1.
I think the majority of people would know, especially in Sand Springs, because Facebook is used a lot.
True.
But if I don't know, or I just see it because somebody else has forwarded the link, how do I get hooked up so I'm seeing all that information?
Right, exactly. So let's talk about the enrollment center.
But how do I do that?
Oh,
On Facebook.
That was a question.
Yeah. How do I do that? Like, I see it because people have shared it
Oh,
or
I see what
forwarded it
you're
on,
saying,
but how do
yes.
I sign up to get all the information that's coming from Sand Springs Public Schools?
Well, first of all, you got to make sure your cell phone number and your demographics are correct in the student information system for starters. We also, I believe, and listen, our communication director is sitting in the background smiling at me, but I think we can put a QR code or something that would take you directly to the Facebook page or our social media pages. I know you can find that on the website with a click of the button. So
Right.
That's how you would hook in. You got to follow our page for sure on the website. So just make sure you're doing that. The other thing I think is important, sorry about that, is the enrollment center hours because the enrollment center doesn't go away this summer.
No, we do not take the summer off, which is really helpful. And it's the enrollment center and the special education office. Both of those offices are open all summer long. We run summer hours Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 o'clock, just like we run during the school year. And what we see sometimes the week before school starts, parents have a little bit of a moment that they realize, oh goodness, I didn't take care of that information, or we moved from one house in Sand Springs to another house in Sand Springs, so we need to get you a new updated utility bill. And what's happening also those first couple of weeks of August is that we have new families that are coming into Sand Springs that are enrolling for the fall. So we want to make sure that our public knows we are open all summer long. You don't have to wait till August to take care of that information. You can come in on June 1st and we can help you with any of those things that you need to do. And if you are not tech savvy and maybe need a little extra help even getting online and doing the new online registration portal, we have an ability for you to do that in our computer lab at our new enrollment center. So we want that to be first and foremost in your mind, to know that you don't have to wait until the last possible moment. You don't have to wait till August because you thought maybe no one was around because the sites are closed. We are not. We are open for business. We'd love to see you. When you see this slideshow, you're going to see the sweetest smiling faces there that want to help you. And those ladies will be there every single day, Monday through Friday, all summer long.
And that is a change. We have been open last summer as well, all summer, but truly that hasn't always been the case in our district. So just trying really hard to be user friendly for parents and make it super easy. The other thing I can't help but mention, the Enrollment Center is new. We had a ribbon cutting this semester. Beautiful entry, beautiful place. But also, not only is the Enrollment Center there, but our child nutrition offices are right across the hall. So if you have a need and think that your family may qualify for free or reduced lunches, that it's all right there together in just a one-stop place for consistency and convenience.
Right. And just to piggyback even a little bit more, the special education office, the reason I put that into play, we're actually going to be housed at the Enrollment Center with those ladies this summer. So if you're moving in, you're watching this and you're going to move in, you don't have to wait till the week before school starts to bring us an IEP from your last district. You don't have to wait till the week before school starts to give us a call and say, are you going to be able to accommodate my child? This is what my child's needs look like. You can call us starting at the beginning of summer, and we'll be able to help you with that. Which also goes back to what Ms. Arnold was talking about regarding placement and caseload and understanding the population of students that we have coming to Sand Springs for next school
So I
year.
got to stop. I'm going to put a plug in for our special education department. It's dear to my heart. That's kind of the department I worked in early on. But truly, when Ms. Laguber says meeting the needs of your child, it would be a very rare occasion that we couldn't meet the needs of all children. And I have to say that out loud.
Yes.
And proud.
Yes, absolutely. And I will even take that a step further to say, if you live in our district, we're gonna meet the needs of your child.
Absolutely.
What I'm really thinking about is when we get to the next
transfer
slide and we start
portion.
talking about transfers, we do want to make sure before we accept a transfer student that we do have the caseload ability and the teacher
Right,
ability
absolutely.
to take that on.
So another role that Ms. Arnold loves to do, I'm sure, is policy. And so the new transfer law was passed last legislative season, but became law January 1 of 2022. So talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about where they could find the transfer policy, because it is posted.
Right, so follow me here, and if you have any questions, you can just give me a call at the main number, 1400, and they'll hook you up. And I will get you where you need to be. But if you go to our website, sandites.org, and you hover over administration, just put your little mouse there, hover over administration, and then it'll have a drop-down list. And you're going to click on district policy information. And once you click on that district policy information, it pulls up all the policies for our district. And it'll have a little search up in the corner, and all you have to do is type in transfer in the search, and it'll pull up all the policies that have to do a transfer and explain the new process, what that looks like, how we do that, how we track that in accordance with the law, and what our guidelines and requirements are.
So
They
easy.
change.
It is an easy place for information.
Yes.
Sometimes policy can be a little confusing. We're very well versed, as quite a few people are in our district. So if you do have a question, that's a great way to get that answer, is to call our central office and ask for help. So let's shift a little bit about transfers, because it is different from where it has been historically across the state. So do you mind?
No, I don't. And I've got 5 bullet points of different areas of transfers, because there are different categories of transfers. So here's where I want to start.
But we know they're important too because they're on sticky notes.
That's right. If I have it on a sticky note, it is important. Yes. So if you are a current Sand Springs student and you're on a transfer, so at some point in your child's career, you filled out either an open or an emergency transfer for your student and they were accepted, we are asking, based on the new law, that current transfer students fill out one new transfer application on the new app that is applicable to the new law.
So we're asking not because we want to create another piece of information for you all. We're asking because it is required by law.
It is required by the
So
state, yes.
we don't have a choice. So
Right.
you might speak to those folks who are coming from a dependent district like Keystone and Anderson.
Yes.
That may be your next bullet.
It's one of my bullet.
Okay.
You're right. It is one of my bullet. I have gotten several very valid questions from people who have children that are at the high school in Sand Springs. They're in 9th through 12th grade, and they went to Anderson, or they went to Keystone, or maybe Pretty Water. Those are dependent districts, which means that they go K through 8, maybe K through 6, and then they're ours or someone else's after they leave their grade level. But they're not truly ours. They still belong to the district where they live. So if you reside in the Anderson district, even though they don't have 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, you're still technically an Anderson student. And so what the state requires is that you fill out this transfer request one time. It is an automatic approval. If you live in a dependent district, we are going to approve that transfer request.
Special ed or not?
Correct.
All.
In grades 9 through 12.
Correct, in
Yes.
grades 9 through 12. If you live in one of those dependent districts and you want to come here in 3rd grade, that's not an automatic acceptance. That's going to be part of what I talk about here in a minute. So I just want to make sure that it's clear. If you keep getting that text push from us that says, hey, we still need you to fill out this transfer request for one time, that's why that's coming to you, because you're in 9th through 12th grade and you're here from one of our dependent districts.
So our dependent schools can't complete the course of study for graduation from high school.
Right.
So just to be clear, once you fill out that paperwork, and it's going to feel weird because some of you have been, you may be going to be a senior next year and you've been coming to us for all this time. It's still required. So the minute you do that, you are a Sand Springs Public School student, and we're so proud to take all those.
But I also want to say that this law just came about, and really, they really just kind of starting to finalize the rules for us. So in us gathering that information, making sure we're getting you the correct information. I mean, there's been a few times that we've called the State Department to get clarification to make sure that we're giving you the correct information. And that's even as early as right before we had this meeting.
Yes.
Because there are some districts that still have some misinformation that because the information hasn't caught up or hasn't been pushed out. But before we did this today, we actually clarified some things, that being one of them, to make sure that we're getting you the correct information. And to be honest, it's kind of confusing. So
But that one is hot off the presses.
That is hot
We
off
know
the
if
press.
you are here from a dependent district,
15 minutes ago.
yes, then
Frankly,
we're asking for that
I kind
application.
of think it simplifies it because we don't have this difference of open versus emergency transfers
Right.
anymore. A
It's a
transfer
wash.
is a transfer.
Mhm.
The good news is anyone, I believe, that was on a transfer this year that meet the criteria for attendance and behavior,
Yes.
those are going to be grandfathered in. So you will know that. And I don't know, Carrie, where you guys are in the process of that.
Right. So we're working on that right now. If you have completed, if you're a current transfer student and you've completed that application, we have processed those, and we are at this moment working on those letters that will be going out to you. At the Enrollment Center, we made the decision to send all those letters on the same day because we don't want any confusion when your next door neighbor gets their letter that they've been approved and you haven't gotten your letter yet that you've been approved for the transfer. So we're deciding we're going to get those all gathered up. So give us a little bit of time there because we do take quite a few transfers. And
We
so
do.
it's going to take us a little bit of time, but we are processing that. We have one of our enrollment specialists that is what her time is completely focused and dedicated to right now. And
But-
so those are coming.
Just to be clear, though, those students that are current transfers today,
Mhm.
we have opted to grandfather in. And the only two exceptions would be attendance, correct?
And yes, attendance and discipline.
And discipline.
So if your student is a current transfer student and there has been a significant attendance issue or a significant discipline issue, then the principals are filling out paperwork to let us know that we're not going to approve that transfer because we think it's really important that kids are at school.
Right.
And if you're having trouble getting here because you're living somewhere else, we're going to ask that you go back to your home district if there's an attendance or discipline issue.
And then the clarification there is that would apply to those that are not from a dependent school.
Correct.
So
Correct.
our Keystone,
See why it's complicated?
our Anderson kids are our kids, they're
Yes.
our students, because they don't offer 9 through 12 in those districts. So important clarification. I think.
Yes.
But we do have, you're right, we take a lot of transfers. And
Right.
so from pre-K through grade 8, it's not atypical to have several transfers in our district, and that's okay. We want to make sure we're serving the needs of our kids.
And I will say, in those very rare cases that we are denying for attendance or discipline, you will also get a letter, and that letter is going to very specifically spell out to you why your transfer has been denied.
And so the key word is rare.
Rare, very rare. Yeah, very rare. Okay, so that sums up current students.
Okay.
The next thing that I want to talk about is, well, these could potentially be current or they could be new. For kindergarten students, so they're either at pre-K right now, or perhaps they're at a private preschool, perhaps they're still at a daycare, they didn't enroll at our early childhood center,
Or maybe they're just starting school.
or
for the
maybe they're
first
just
time.
starting school for the first time. Right now, when we accept transfers for kindergartners, if you get an acceptance letter from us for an incoming kindergartner, it is going to say you have been accepted into the district, but we are not ready to let you know what school site you're going to be assigned to yet. And let me explain why. Because so many students don't start in pre-K, we have no way to gauge caseloads for kindergarten. We have no way to predict how many kindergartners truly live in our Sand Springs district. So we want to accommodate as many of those transfer requests as we can, but we can't with certainty let you know right now in April which school site they're going to be at. Now, we are going to do our very best to get them at the site that you have asked for the transfer to. If for some reason we cannot accommodate that, you're going to get a call from the enrollment center that's going to say, hey, you asked for this elementary school, we're not able to put you in there. Are you comfortable with this school or this school? So you're going to still get a choice.
So let's talk capacity just a little bit.
Sure.
Because what you're going to notice when you go to the website is a capacity report that's in real time, meaning that as kids transfer into the district, we're noting with a number how many slots for transfers are available at each school site by grade level. That's really important to note. So to give you the reason why that could be a possibility, for instance, Limestone is our smallest school site elementary wise. And so they fill up really quickly, and the bulk of their students, most of them, to really almost all, are residents of Limestone. Would that be a correct statement? Ms. Arnold was our
100%.
principal years ago at Limestone.
Right,
So
right. They're always full, and
Right.
they do have a lot of requests for transfers, but according to the law, we have to take the residents of that site first. So we have to look at that, who lives in this area, and then we bring the others in. And that's one reason that Dive and updating that information, getting that done as early as possible so we know those numbers before we start taking in transfers, keeps our numbers such where they need to be. Because we want to take the transfers, we just don't want you to,
we also don't want to have a huge class size.
yeah, we don't want to have, 30 in kindergarten because they are landlocked. I mean, I always looked at it kind of like Noah's Ark. There's 2 by 2 there for 2 in every grade, but they don't have the capacity to put other classes in there.
Correct.
And they don't have the playground space to even put like
Because
a
the
portable.
school itself
Right.
physically is small.
Right, awesome school, and a lot of people want to go there. But that's one of the reasons it's so important to get that information updated so we can get all the kids in the slots and we know what we're dealing with.
Correct.
But
So
can I ask you something? So you said, let's say I have 3 kids and I've got a kindergartner. I mean, heaven forbid, at my age, I don't know what I do, but I have a kindergartner. I have one in 5th grade, and I have one in middle school. So my 5th grade and my middle school student would have already been going. They've been coming to you. So I know that you're going to accept them. But I have a kindergarten that I want to go to the same elementary that my 5th grader's going to. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear but you're telling me that if my 5th grader does go to Limestone and they're going to get to go there next year, there's a possibility, or you wouldn't know for a while, whether my kindergartner could go to Limestone too.
Correct. So we're going to do our very best to keep sibling groups together. But if, for example, since you use Limestone, if we were not able to accommodate that student at Limestone, we would let you know the other sites where there was availability. And we are going to get that information out to parents by August 1st,
Right.
which is 3 full weeks before school actually starts. And so it's not a last minute panic
Right.
mode.
And I think it's really helpful for parents to see the capacity report
Yes.
Right.
because it's posted. And so what's happening in real time when our enrollment center gets a new family, I might have a first, second, and fourth grader, but you're going to know based on the capacity report how many slots are left at each elementary school by site. So you're going to know that
Mhm.
information up front because we posted it.
And the new law is very clear in its wording that each individual student has to be processed separately.
Right.
We can't just blanket accept a family at a site, each child, because of that grade
Correct.
level capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that's kindergarten. The last thing I want to talk about on new transfers, and then I'm going to shift a little bit to special education transfers. You had the opportunity to write in some questions, and we got a few questions from you, and they all had the same theme, and it was really about, I have filled out an application for next school year. I'm not a current Sand Springs student, but I want to be a Sand Springs student next year. And my answer for you there is that principals are getting that information as we speak, and they are working on accepting those or denying based on discipline, attendance, or capacity, like Ms. Durkee just spoke about. Obviously, our priority is that we are first doing the acceptance letters for current transfer students, and then we're moving on to begin to process the letters for students who want to be new to us for the first time in 22-23. One parent in particular said, we lived here, we moved away, and so we got to stay here because we were accepted on a transfer, but we're moving back. So my answer for that specific of a situation is you're going to want to continue to complete the out of district transfer form, and then once you move back into Sand Springs, then you're a resident
Right.
again. So you belong to us. You're ours then. And so go ahead and complete that transfer paperwork. And if you have completed transfer paperwork and you're getting a little worried because you haven't heard anything, call the enrollment center. That's going to be up on our slides. You can see all of the contact information there. The ladies over there would be happy to look through the spreadsheet and they can say, yes, we've gotten your application. It's complete. We're in the process of processing it. We're
Right.
going through that right now to make sure that we have the capacity and that we know about any discipline or attendance issues that you have at your current
Correct.
school. So
Correct.
we're working through those.
So special education is a little bit unique.
It is.
Well, wait a minute, you just said something that sparked my interest. So you said, I just have to go there. So if I have a naughty child, and I can't say whether mine were naughty or not, but if I have a naughty child and I want to, and they've been in some trouble in another district, and I want to transfer to your district, those records go with them?
Yes, so that is also part of the law. So when we send a records request, if you applied for a transfer, we're sending a records request to the current district. They're sending us grades, they're sending us discipline, they're sending us attendance. If they're a high school level, including grades, you're going to get a transcript, you're going to get those things. We cannot and would not base acceptance on a student's grades. That's not something that we're going to do. But it's important to have because we do have to transcript. We have to make sure that we're getting a student on track to graduate. But the law very clearly states that discipline and attendance are factors that could weigh in to us being able to choose if we're going to accept or deny a student for a transfer.
I think
I love playing devil's advocate.
Yes.
you do.
We
I
know.
know this. But attendance really is important. And Carrie, you said something earlier about we can't teach students who are not present.
Right.
And so that piece is really important. We also can accept virtual transfers. There's some legislation out there right now about changing kind of the criteria as it currently stands. for us to accept a full-time virtual student, it really isn't full-time virtual. You'd have to be on campus at least one period a day.
Right.
So
Even if it's on the virtual campus.
correct.
Yes.
But there's little nuances like that. So virtual transfers are and can happen. They're happening now. It's just there's a little bit more information that Mr. Roeder would clarify.
Yes, and I would say, shameless plug for Mr. Roeder.
Oh,
He would be
absolutely.
more than willing to help you understand that process if you want to get a hold of his office, because
Right.
he does know the ins and outs and the law that pertains to virtual transfers.
Correct.
So shifting to special education, there has been some confusion across the state just because this is so new. Essentially, the special education transfer laws did not change. So the expectation for accepting a special education transfer is the same as it always has been. And what that is really about is, do I have capacity within my special education classrooms or my special education settings to be able to serve the student appropriately as their IEP calls for them to be served? So one of the things that we do, this is a constant theme, but in the law it says someone from the special ed department of each school needs to have communication. So when I get a transfer request from another school, I'm calling the special ed director over there and I'm just saying, I'm looking at this IEP. It says the student is served in this way. Is that how that student is truly being served? And then we make the decision based on that.
Right.
Because again, we have to and want to serve our resident students well.
Right.
And so we want to make sure we're not overcrowding a classroom that is full of students that are truly Sand
well,
Springs
and
residents.
I think that goes back to wanting to serve our students with special needs well too.
Right.
That's has been a priority for this district for years.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure we're taking care of the needs of students is critical and important to us. So
Right.
that would be the reason we would want to make sure that our programs and the space in those programs
Mhm.
allow for us to do that with integrity.
Right. And I didn't have this as a bullet point, but it just popped in my head when we were talking about how the transfer law for special ed didn't change. I think it's also important to note that the rules of sports and OSSAA for transfers also didn't change. I've seen a lot of misinformation from usually people commenting on maybe a news channel story about the transfer law. A lot of people think that this transfer law suddenly allows athletes to just bounce from district to district and be immediately eligible.
Correct.
And so essentially what you need to understand about if your student is transferring with the prospect of playing sports, that is still going to have to be vetted through OSSAA.
Correct.
And yes, they can apply for a transfer. We would love for you to apply for a transfer
At a varsity level.
at the varsity level, yes.
So that's a whole huge discussion we can have with Mr. Sitton.
Sure.
But basically, once you declare eligibility in a district, transferring to another district can really
be complicated.
and you might have to sit for a year and lose a year of eligibility. So that's a whole nother piece, but if that's something that you're concerned about, certainly something you should investigate for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we use this word a lot, and of course we all know what it means because we live in this world. But could you just, Carrie, just explain to me about caseload? Because I know that special education parents, especially people on transfer, hear that word caseload. But could you explain a little bit what that means? And it's not just the caseload for a teacher, but I'm thinking about because depending on the services that you need, those
Sure.
people have a caseload. So
Sure.
just a little bit about.
So if you're thinking about services for a special education student, what I have to look at is maybe the amount of time they're in a special ed room versus the amount of time that they're in a general ed room. And maybe it's about my student has some significant medical needs. And so my student maybe needs to be tube fed, or they're non-ambulatory, they're nonverbal. We have very specific programs that are geared towards serving students in a way that their needs are all being met. And those caseload numbers have to stay small. And so, for example, back in the day, my classroom, when I taught at Angus, I couldn't have more than 10 students in my classroom because that was the expectation from the State Department for the special education classes.
And I'm just gonna say, we equip those rooms with enough support that kids can be successful.
Absolutely.
So, for instance, in your classroom from a few years ago, it was you, certified teacher,
Right.
alongside 2 paraprofessionals.
Right.
Even though the caseload was 10.
Right. Right.
So we're super conscientious
Yes.
about making sure we have the ample services provided to kids with every disability, but in that case, with your more severe disability.
And then some of those kids that you had in your classroom, they might need speech.
Sure.
So they go to the speech teacher,
PT,
which is on their
yes.
caseload.
Right.
And then occupational therapist, because they would need help, so that goes on their caseload
Right.
for that time. And so when we talk about caseloads, really, when I was in enrollment, parents were like, well, I don't understand like the caseload thing, but that's the kids that you're serving to make sure that we're meeting all their needs, but it also kind of branches off onto some other people as those services are being provided.
Right. And that's why I really appreciate the cooperative nature of discussing with the other districts, because you can really get a good picture of your current capacity in special ed and your ability to be able to serve those students or not. And
I mean, getting the IEP, I think they do a pretty good job
Sure.
describing needs of students.
Sure.
But that conversation that
Really
happens,
important.
it really is important to understand exactly what the children need.
Right.
So,
And the other part is that we have kids that come in or kids that we have now that are gonna be identified. And so those kids are gonna end up in those caseloads too.
Sure.
Because
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
always have kids that are coming forward
Always
that need additional
anticipating
help.
that.
Yeah.
so now when did you say the enrollment center is open?
All summer long. We're open all summer.
long.
What are the hours?
And
8 to 4, Monday through
And
Friday.
the portal opens
June 1st.
Okay, fantastic. We might say that again before we actually turn the
Right.
portal on.
And I've gone through all my bullet points.
Okay, so again, you'll get the PowerPoint that's attached.
Mhm.
Please go through that because it's very short, actually, compared to what sometimes we put out.
Right.
But again, so the enrollment center is open,
Monday through Friday, 8 to 4.
and enrollment, pre-registration, whatever you want to call that, happens when?
June
The
1st.
portal opens June 1st. I think that's it. We're available to answer any questions. I will say our ladies at the Enrollment Center are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So they can answer all those questions as well. So that's it. Let us know if you have any questions and enjoy your evening.